we journey into the vibrant world of Eden, where life thrives beneath the glow of the celestial bodies, Solara and Luminara. And if you enjoy this original story, then please don't forget to leave a like, share your thoughts, and consider subscribing for more content like this. It helps others find the channel and become weary dreamers. But for now, get cozy and settle in for an immersive journey into the magical world of Eden. Asher stood at the edge of the sacred botanical gardens, his weathered fingers tracing the scorched border of the greenhouse's broken window. Sapphire sunlight streamed through the glass, casting blue shadows across the disturbed soil where the twilight orchids had once bloomed. This was the third theft this month, each more precise than the last. "Same as before?" asked Thorin, a junior shield member whose lupine features betrayed his bonding with a sand fox. Asher nodded, his mix of scales and sun-tanned skin catching the light as he knelt. "Exactly the same. No forced entry, no disturbance to adjacent plants." He gestured to the nearly surgical removal. They knew what they wanted. Thorin whistled low. "The head botanist is furious. Claims these specimens took 15 years to cultivate." Asher ran a hand through his copper hair, streaked with premature silver. At 42 seasons, he was young to show such aging, especially for a Cinderborn. What else was taken? Moonshade ferns from the nocturnal section, and solar bloom pollen from the reserve gardens. Thorin's tail flicked nervously. "Sir, those combinations. I know what they suggest." Asher cut him off sharply. "Lunagist alchemy," he breathed, rising to his feet. The movement sent a familiar pain shooting through his right side, where his scales had begun to fade from brilliant orange to a dull rust. Asher disguised his wince as thoughtfulness. "Inform Captain Brenner. I'll be handling this personally." Thorin shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his gaze flicking to the rust-colored patches on Asher's side. "Sir, with all due respect, are you certain you should pursue this alone? You're—" Asher's head snapped up, eyes narrowing to amber slits. The look carried 17 years of shield service and the unspoken command of silence. Forgive me, sir." Thorin's ears flattened against his skull. "I'll inform the captain immediately." He backed away, boots crunching on fallen glass before he disappeared through the garden doors. Asher exhaled through clenched teeth. His scales itched with irritation, both from his ailment and the doubt in the young knight's voice. They always underestimated him once they noticed his condition, as if a dying flame couldn't still burn. The gardens stretched across the eastern edge of Marashar, its domed structures glittering like sapphire bubbles in the afternoon light. Asher walked the perimeter, noting the subtle disturbances in the earth. A single set of boot prints, light and measured, disappearing toward the twilight woods that marked the boundary between Solaran and Luminaran territories. He crouched, pressing his scaled palm against the packed soil. Years ago, he could have sensed residual heat with perfect clarity, tracking a suspect's path for miles through temperature alone. Now, he barely detected the faintest warmth, another reminder of his deteriorating bonds. A stab of pain interrupted his tracking, more intense than before. Asher stumbled, catching himself against a stone marker, its terra stone surface cool against his burning palm. His scales, a feature he'd inherited after his second bonding with a cindermander, started flickering like dying embers, briefly glowing before fading to ash grey at the edges. With practiced movement, he unfastened his collar, checking that no one observed him as he examined the floral pattern that had once proudly emblazoned his chest, the mark of his first bonding with a fiery ember orchid. The crimson patterns, once vibrant enough to glow through his tunic during moments of heightened emotion, were now dulling to the color of dried blood. Both scales and petals alike were flaking away, each lost fragment taking with it a piece of the power that had defined him. Over 30 seasons since his second bonding, and now those bonds, and in turn his body, were betraying him. The shield physicians had no explanation. His bonded attributes and abilities were deteriorating decades before their time. Most Solarans maintained their powers well into their 70s, especially those with dual fire-based bonds like his. He refastened his uniform and straightened. The thief's trail led toward the border, but he'd need to hurry to follow it before dusk. The sapphire light of Solara was already deepening toward twilight, and soon Luminara would rise, bathing the world in emerald light that would weaken him further. Before he reached the woods, the pain returned with stunning force. Asher gasped, dropping to one knee as heat flared through his body, then vanished completely, leaving him cold. He tried to summon his power, a simple flame that even a fledgling cinderborn could conjure, but only sparks danced between his fingers before sputtering out. "Shield, Commander." A villager passing on the nearby path slowed, concern in her voice. "Do you require assistance?" "No," he replied quickly, standing with forced steadiness. "Merely examining tracks." The woman nodded, though her expression remained doubtful. He recognized the look. The same whispers had followed him for months, how the once mighty flame of the Eastern Shield was faltering, how his missions now kept him conveniently close to the barracks, how younger members were assigned the duties that had once been his responsibility. Twilight deepened around him as he finally reached the forest edge. The trail was still visible, winding through the underbrush with purpose. Asher hesitated at the boundary. Protocol dictated calling for Luminaran Watch support after dusk, but that would mean returning to headquarters, filing reports, explaining his theories about Lunagist involvement, and submitting to another humiliating examination when he failed to maintain his flame in the presence of senior officers. The thief was heading northeast toward the isolated hills where few traveled. Asher made his decision. Drawing his sword, its blade dull without his usual flame enhancement, he stepped into the forest. The emerald glow of Luminara had just begun to peek through the trees, and with it, the familiar weakness crept into his limbs. Asher would solve this case alone. He had to. Without his power, without his position in the shield, he had nothing left. 3 hours into the woods, Asher regretted his decision. Luminara hung full in the night sky, her emerald light filtering through the canopy and casting everything in ghostly green. His tracking had slowed considerably. Without his enhanced vision, he relied on conventional skills, stopping frequently to check broken twigs and disturbed leaves. The pain in his side had settled into a constant dull ache. Each step away from Solaran territory seemed to drain him further. Still, stubbornness drove him forward. The trail led him to a narrow ravine, then up a winding path along its edge. As he crested a hill, Asher paused, catching his breath. Below him, nestled in a small clearing, stood a stone cottage with a thatched roof. Warm light glowed from its windows, and surrounding it was the most extraordinary garden he had ever seen. Even in the emerald moonlight, he could make out plants that shouldn't exist together. Solaran fire lilies blooming beside Luminaran frost ferns, desert cacti thriving next to marsh reeds. The garden followed no pattern he recognized, plants arranged in concentric circles around a central pond that reflected Luminara's glow. Asher crouched, observing. This was no ordinary garden, and no ordinary thief. Only someone with extensive botanical knowledge, and something more, could maintain such impossible combinations. A figure emerged from the cottage with a basket in hand. The dull light revealed only an elderly woman's silhouette, her silver hair gleaming as she moved among the plants, precisely collecting leaves and flowers. He shifted position for a better view and dislodged a stone. It tumbled down the hillside, clattering loudly in the night silence. The woman straightened immediately. "I know you're there," she called, her voice surprisingly strong. "Solaran Shield members rarely venture this far after dusk." Asher froze, then slowly stood. There was no point in hiding now. "I'm investigating thefts from the sacred botanical gardens," he replied, making his way carefully down the hill. "I've followed tracks to this location." "Have you indeed?" The woman turned toward him, and Asher saw her face clearly for the first time. She was elderly, yes, but her eyes were sharp and bright, a sparkling emerald color that reflected the moonlight. Her wrinkled face bore subtle markings, not quite scales, not quite leaves, suggesting a complex bonding with multiple elements. "Your garden contains several of the stolen specimens," Asher continued, approaching cautiously. "Twilight orchids don't naturally grow in this region." The woman smiled, setting down her basket. "Very observant, though I've cultivated my own orchids for decades. Would you care to examine them to confirm they're the stolen ones?" Her confidence gave Asher pause. He scanned the garden again, noting details he'd missed. The orchids here were mature plants, not the younger specimens reported stolen. "I'm Litheria," she offered when he remained silent. "And you are Commander Asher of the Eastern Shield. Your reputation precedes you, though I expected more. Fire." Asher stiffened. "You know who I am?" "I make it my business to know who patrols these borderlands." She gestured toward the cottage. "Come inside. The night grows cold, especially for one whose inner flame is fading." Her words struck like a physical blow. His hand went to the sunstone-encrusted hilt of his sword. "How could you possibly know that?" Litheria's smile turned sad. "Your scales are dulling, Commander. Your posture betrays pain, and no Solaran with a healthy bonding would look so weakened, even under Luminara's gaze." She turned toward the cottage. "I have tea brewing. We can discuss the botanical thefts, and perhaps your condition." Every instinct told him to arrest her immediately and bring her in for questioning. This woman's knowledge, her strange garden, her ability to read his symptoms. all pointed to lunagist practices. But curiosity and desperation won out. He followed her inside, hand still resting on his sword hilt. The cottage interior was a scholar's dream and a shield member's nightmare. Star lace vines hung from the ceiling beams, their silver and turquoise petals illuminating the space below. Shelves lined every wall, filled with jars of powders, liquids, and preserved specimens. Books, many bearing symbols banned in Solaran territories, were stacked on tables alongside mortar and pestles of various sizes. "This is lunagist paraphernalia," he stated flatly, taking in the evidence of forbidden alchemical work. Lytheria poured tea from a copper kettle into 2 ceramic cups. "I'm a healer who uses all available knowledge, Commander. Labels like lunagist are political inventions, not natural distinctions." She handed him a cup. Asher hesitated, then accepted it, though he didn't drink. "If I were going to poison you, I wouldn't need to invite you inside to do it," she observed with a chuckle. "Besides, killing a shield commander would bring unwanted attention." She moved to a workbench where various plants were being dried and sorted. Among them, Asher recognized the distinctive silver-blue petals of the stolen solar blooms. You are the thief," he said, setting down the untouched tea and drawing his sword. "By the authority of the Solaran shield." A spasm of pain cut off his words. His right side seized, scales flaking visibly now, falling to the floor like dying embers. The sword clattered from his grip as he doubled over, gasping. Lytheria moved swiftly for an elderly woman, catching him before he fell. Her touch was cool against his fevered skin. "Your bonding is collapsing," she said, matter-of-factly, helping him to a chair. "How long has this been happening?" Asher tried to reach for his sword, but another wave of pain stopped him. 6 months, he admitted through gritted teeth. She nodded, examining the deteriorating scales on his arm without touching them. "And the shield physicians? What do they say?" "That it's impossible. That bonded attributes don't deteriorate until old age." Asher's breath came in shallow gasps. "They've been treating me with concentrated sunlight therapy. It isn't working." "Of course it isn't." Lytheria turned to her shelves, selecting various bottles. "Your condition is rare but not unknown. The Solaran shield and religious sects keep such knowledge restricted." She worked quickly, combining liquids and powders in a small bowl, adding what Asher recognized with alarm as crushed moonshade fern. "I'm creating illegal potions right in front of you, Commander," she said, without looking up. "Are you going to arrest me?" She glanced at him, eyes challenging. "Or would you like to try the only remedy that might help you?" Asher watched her work, his training and desperation warring within him. The pain subsided to a dull throb, but he could feel his bonding continuing to unravel. Without it, he was nothing. Not a shield member, not a protector, not even fully himself. "What is it?" he finally asked. Lytheria held up a vial, its contents shimmering like liquid sapphire. "This is what I call radiant brew. It temporarily enhances one's connection to their celestial source, in your case, Solara. Using Luminaran ingredients." Asher's skepticism was evident. "Balance requires both energies, Commander. The artificial separation of Solaran and Luminaran practices is why your physicians can't help you." She offered the vial. "This won't cure you, but it will stabilize your condition temporarily." He stared at the liquid. What's the price? Litheria's smile returned, respect in her eyes at his directness. Your discretion. I continue my work, undisturbed. You want me to ignore lunagist activities? I took an oath. You took an oath to protect the people of Eden, she countered. My remedies help those the traditional healers cannot, including, perhaps, you. The pain flared again, sharper this time. Asher closed his eyes, feeling more scales flake away. His entire career, his identity, his future, all crumbling like his powers. He reached for the vial with desperate hands, hoisting it to his lips with a sigh before drinking the mysterious potion. The effect was instantaneous. Heat coursed through Asher's veins, flowing outward from his core to his extremities. The pain in his side vanished, replaced by a pleasant warmth that felt like basking in direct sunlight. His withered scales brightened, regaining their vibrant orange-gold hue, and the familiar tingle of fire magic danced beneath his skin. By the light of Solara, he whispered, staring at his rejuvenated arm. He raised his hand, effortlessly conjuring a flame that burned steady and bright, casting the cottage in golden light that battled with the green glow from the windows. Litheria observed with clinical interest. The potion reconnects you to Solaran energy, bypassing the damaged pathways of your bonding. Asher extinguished the flame, then summoned it again, marveling at the ease. For months, even the simplest fire manipulation had required intense concentration and left him exhausted. This is remarkable. He looked up at her, suspicion warring with gratitude. Why would the shield forbid something that works so effectively? Litheria gathered her materials, returning bottles to shelves. Politics, control, fear of what they don't understand. She glanced at him over her shoulder. Tell me, Commander, in your training, what were you taught about lunagists? Asher thought of his academy lessons. That they're renegades who dabble in forbidden combinations of energies. That their practices disrupt the natural balance between Solara and Luminara. And have you ever wondered who decided what combinations are forbidden? Who determined the natural balance? Litheria's voice remained calm, but her eyes held intensity. Before the division of practices, healers worked with all energies available to them. Asher rose from the chair, testing his renewed strength. The cottage suddenly felt too small, too filled with dangerous ideas. The division exists for good reason. Mixing energies leads to instability, corruption. Does it? Litheria gestured to his restored scales. Or is that what those in power want everyone to believe? He picked up his sword, sheathing it with a decisive movement. The potion works. I won't deny that. But temporary solutions only delay the inevitable. Indeed. She nodded, returning to her workbench. The deterioration will resume within 24 hours. Your condition requires regular treatment. The implication hung between them. Asher paced the small room, mind racing. He should arrest her immediately, confiscate her illegal substances, report everything to his superiors. It was his duty, his oath. Yet the memory of months of pain, of useless treatments, of pitying glances from fellow SHIELD members, and the miraculous relief he now felt, clouded his judgment. If I were to look the other way regarding your activities, he began carefully, how often would treatment be necessary? Litheria's expression remained neutral, though a glint of triumph flickered in her eyes. Every 3 days, initially, as your condition stabilizes, perhaps weekly. And the long-term effects? Unknown, she admitted. Your case is unusual. Most bonding deterioration occurs in the elderly or after severe trauma. Asher stopped pacing, facing her directly. What caused this then? Why is my bonding failing? Litheria considered him thoughtfully. I would need to study your condition more closely to determine that. Perhaps your bonding was flawed from the beginning, or perhaps what? Perhaps you're changing in ways even you don't recognize. She approached him slowly. Commander, may I? She gestured toward his chest, where his bonding mark centered. After a moment's hesitation, Asher nodded. She placed her palm over his heart, eyes closing in concentration. Her touch sent a strange sensation through him, neither pleasant nor painful, but probing, searching. Interesting, she murmured. Your connection to Solara remains strong, but your bonding with the Cindermander and Ember Orchid is rejecting something, or transforming. She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. I need to monitor this progression to understand it fully. Asher stepped back, uneasy with her assessment. You're proposing regular meetings then? Me turning a blind eye to your lunagist activities in exchange for treatment? A mutually beneficial arrangement, Litheria confirmed. You regain your abilities, maintain your position in the shield, and I continue my research undisturbed. And the botanical thefts? Litheria smiled. I'll return what remains of the specimens, and I'll source my materials elsewhere in the future. Asher knew he was crossing a line, one that separated duty from self-preservation. But the alternative, watching his power and position erode until nothing remained, was unthinkable. 3 conditions, he stated firmly. First, no harmful potions distributed to the public. Second, you share your findings about my condition fully. Third, you create no concoctions that could be used against the shield or citizens of Marashar. Litheria considered these terms, then nodded. Agreed. Though I would add one condition of my own. She retrieved a small leather-bound journal from a drawer. You will document your symptoms, the effects of the treatments, and any changes you notice, no matter how insignificant they seem. Asher took the journal reluctantly. Why? Because understanding is the path to healing, Commander, and because your case may help others with similar conditions in the future. The earnestness in her voice sounded genuine, though Asher remained wary. Still, the renewed strength flowing through him, the absence of pain for the first time in months, weakened his resolve. I'll return in 3 days, he decided, tucking the journal into his uniform pocket. If anyone asks, I'm investigating herbalist practices in the border regions. A partial truth, she observed with a slight smile. The best kind of deception. As Asher prepared to leave, she handed him a small vial, similar to the one he had drunk from. For emergencies only. The effect will be shorter-lived than a fresh preparation. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and Asher noticed something odd. Her hand, which had appeared aged and wrinkled in the emerald moonlight, now seemed smoother, her fingers more supple than he'd initially perceived. "Good night, Commander," she said, opening the door for him. "May Solara's light guide your path home." Stepping outside, Asher was surprised to find the sky lightening with pre-dawn blue. He had spent the entire night at the cottage without realizing it. The garden looked different in the early light, less mysterious, more methodical in its organization. As he made his way back toward Narration, energy still surging pleasantly from the potion, Asher tried to quiet the voice of conscience whispering that he had made a dangerous bargain. The weight of the journal and emergency vial in his pocket felt like secrets already taking root. 2 weeks passed in a carefully established routine. Every third day, Asher would venture to Litheria's cottage under the pretense of border patrols or follow-up investigations. The Shield accepted his excuses without question. His suddenly restored powers had silenced any doubts about his capabilities, and his successful resolution of the botanical thefts had earned him renewed respect. During these visits, Litheria prepared fresh batches of the radiant brew, each slightly modified as she studied his reaction to different formulations. Some left him buzzing with excess energy that took hours to dissipate. Others produced a steadier, more controlled enhancement of his abilities. Tonight, he arrived at the cottage as Luminara rose, casting the garden in its familiar emerald glow. The door opened before he could knock. "You're late," Litheria observed, though her tone held no reproach. She looked different tonight. Her silver hair pulled back from her face, her movements more fluid than her apparent age would suggest. "Shield business," Asher explained, removing his cloak. The cottage had become almost familiar now, the initial strangeness of the Lunagist paraphernalia fading with each visit. "A dispute at the Eastern Farms." She nodded, already preparing his treatment at her workbench. Asher took his usual seat, observing her work. He had begun to recognize the components: the base of solar bloom essence, the counterbalancing moonshade extract, the binding agent derived from twilight orchid pollen. "You've been writing in the journal?" she asked without looking up. He produced the leather-bound book from his pocket. "As instructed, though I'm not sure what value my daily activities hold for your research." Litheria took the journal, scanning his neat entries while continuing her preparation. "Everything has value, Commander. The timing of symptom recurrence, your energy levels throughout the day, even your dreams." She paused on a particular page, her finger tracing his description of a recurring dream, flying above Narration, viewing both Solara and Luminara simultaneously in an impossible sky. "Interesting," she murmured, returning the journal. "Your connection to the celestial bodies is evolving." Asher shifted uncomfortably. "The Shield physicians examined me yesterday. They found no trace of the deterioration that was evident just weeks ago. They're calling it a miraculous recovery." "And did you tell them about our arrangement?" Litheria added 3 drops of a pearlescent liquid to the mixture, which turned from blue to a deep violet before settling back to azure. "Of course not." Asher watched the color transformation with fascination. "They would have me arrested for consorting with a lunagist, miraculous recovery or not." Litheria smiled, her face catching the lamplight in a way that momentarily made her appear decades younger. "Then our mutual secret remains safe." She handed him the completed potion. "This formulation should last longer than the previous one. 4 days, perhaps 5. Asher examined the liquid. "You've changed something." very observant. I've added an element to help integrate the energies more fully with your natural bonding." She watched intently as he drank. The now familiar warmth spread through him, but this time it was accompanied by something new, a tingling sensation that extended beyond his scales, radiating into the surrounding skin. His vision sharpened dramatically, colors intensifying. He could suddenly distinguish minute details in the room that had been invisible moments before. "This is different," he said, his voice sounding strange to his own ears. "Better?" Lytheria inquired, already making notes in her own journal. "I feel stronger." Asher flexed his hand, watching as flames danced between his fingers with unprecedented control. "But not just my Solaran connection. Everything feels enhanced." She nodded, seemingly pleased. "Your body is adapting to the treatments, learning to process the energies more efficiently." Something in her tone caught his attention. "Is that expected?" "It's hoped for," she replied cryptically, continuing her notes. Asher stood, testing this new energy. The cottage suddenly felt confining. "I need air." She gestured toward the door. "The garden is pleasant under Luminara's light." Outside, the night air felt cool against his skin, which now seemed hypersensitive. He walked among the plants, noticing how they appeared to respond to his presence, turning slightly as he passed, like miniature sunflowers tracking Solara. Lytheria joined him, carrying a small basket. "Help me collect evening bloom," she suggested, handing him a pair of silver shears. "The flowers only open under Luminara's direct light." They worked side by side, moving through the garden in companionable silence. Asher found himself noticing details about Lytheria he had overlooked before. How her hands, despite their apparent age, moved with precise grace. How her eyes changed color slightly with her mood, shifting from violet to a deeper amethyst. How her silver hair caught the moonlight in patterns that seemed to match the luminescent plants surrounding them. "You're not what you appear to be," he said suddenly, the realization emerging before he could stop it. Lytheria paused in her harvesting, regarding him with measured assessment. "Few things are, Commander." "Your age," Asher continued, the enhanced perception from the new potion formulation making connections his mind had previously missed. "It's a glamour of some kind." A slow smile spread across her face. "Very good. Most never notice, even after years of acquaintance." She straightened, and as she did, her appearance subtly shifted, the deep wrinkles softening, her stooped posture straightening, her features becoming more defined. Asher stepped back in surprise. The woman before him now appeared no older than 30, her silver hair contrasting with her relatively youthful face. "Why the deception?" he asked, instinctively reaching for his sword before remembering he had left it inside. "Protection," Lytheria answered simply. "An elderly hermit healer draws less scrutiny than a woman in her prime, practicing forbidden arts." She continued harvesting as if nothing had changed. "The Solaran authorities are less likely to see a threat, and the Luminaran Watch rarely bothers with what they perceive as harmless eccentricity." Asher watched her move with new grace, her true form revealed. "What else have you hidden from me?" Lytheria met his gaze directly. "Many things, Commander, as I'm sure you've hidden aspects of yourself from me." She approached him, fearless despite having revealed her deception. "But the important question is, Does my true appearance change our arrangement? It shouldn't, Asher knew. Her age was irrelevant to their bargain. Yet, something had shifted, a new tension entering their dynamic. He was suddenly acutely aware of her as a woman, not merely a healer or lunagist. "No," he said finally. "Our arrangement stands." "Good." Letheria's smile returned, genuine this time. "Because there's something I'd like to show you." She led him to a section of the garden where a small stone circle contained plants unlike any he had seen. Flowers with petals that seemed to shift between solid and translucent, vines that moved of their own accord. "What are these?" he asked, fascinated despite himself. "My true work," she explained, her voice taking on a passionate quality he hadn't heard before. "Plants that exist in harmony with both celestial energies simultaneously. Creations that demonstrate what's possible when artificial boundaries are removed." She knelt beside a particularly striking specimen, a flower whose blossoms were dual-colored, sapphire blue on one side, emerald green on the other, the colors swirling together where they met. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said softly. "Imagine people with this same balance. Imagine what Eden could become if we stopped forcing everyone to choose sides." Asher found himself drawn to her vision, despite years of shield indoctrination warning against such thinking. "The division exists for stability," he argued, though with less conviction than before. "History shows that mixing the energies leads to corruption." He paused, swallowing hard as he recalled past skirmishes with the most formidable foes he's ever faced. "Like the Vileborn," he finished with a whisper. "History and rumors of the Vileborn are manufactured by those who enforce the division," Letheria countered. She stood, facing him directly. "What do you feel right now, Commander? Corruption? Or power beyond what your limited Solaran practices ever offered you?" Asher couldn't deny the extraordinary sensations flowing through him. The potion had enhanced not just his fire manipulation, but every sense, every movement, every thought. He felt more alive than he had in years, possibly more than he ever had. "It's temporary," he reminded himself aloud. "It doesn't have to be." Her voice lowered, almost a whisper. "Your bonding isn't failing. It's evolving. Your body is trying to connect with energies your shield training taught you to reject. That's not possible. We bond with elements aligned with our celestial affinity. I'm Solaran. I've always been Solaran." "Are you?" Letheria reached out, her fingers lightly tracing the pattern of scales on his exposed wrist. The touch sent unexpected warmth through him. "Or are you something more complex, forced into simplicity by a system that fears what it cannot control?" Her face was close to his now, her eyes reflecting both the emerald moonlight and the faint glow of his own fire-touched skin. For a moment, Asher forgot his duty, his oaths, the artificial boundaries that had defined his life. He leaned forward suddenly, kissing her with a reckless abandon that surprised even himself. Letheria responded with unbridled passion, her cool fingers contrasting with the heat of his cinder-born body. When they finally separated, he saw tiny flames dancing in her silver hair, which she extinguished with a laugh. Well, she said, eyes sparkling with amusement and something deeper. That was an unexpected development in your treatment plan, Commander. Asher should have felt shame, regret, horror at his lapse in judgment. Instead, he felt only a strange certainty, as if something inevitable had finally occurred. Perhaps not so unexpected, he replied, his enhanced senses noting the subtle changes in her expression. Pleasure, calculation, and something that might have been triumph. The Solara Shield headquarters buzzed with activity as Asher strode through the main hall. 2 months had passed since his first visit to Letheria's cottage, and his transformation had not gone unnoticed. His once fading bonding now manifested more vibrantly than ever, scales gleaming with metallic luster, flames burning hotter and more controlled than even in his prime. "Commander," Captain Brenner called, intercepting him before he reached his office. "A moment of your time?" He nodded, following her into a side chamber. Brenner had been his closest ally in the Shield for nearly a decade, her Falcon bonding making her the perfect reconnaissance partner to his offensive fire capabilities. "Your border patrol reports," she began without preamble, spreading several parchments across the table. "They're concerning." Asher glanced at the documents, his own reports from the past weeks, detailing increased activity near the Twilight Woods, possible lunagist movements, suspicious gatherings near the Moonglade, all carefully crafted misinformation to direct Shield attention away from Letheria. "What concerns you, Captain?" he asked, maintaining a neutral expression. Brenner's sharp eyes, yellow with vertical pupils from her Falcon bonding, studied him intently. "For one, these locations don't match the patrol routes you've been observed taking." A chill ran through him, despite the constant warmth of his enhanced bonding. "You've been having me followed?" Brenner's voice lowered. "As a friend, there are rumors. Your sudden recovery, your frequent absences, your changing appearance." Asher instinctively raised a hand to his face. He knew what she meant. The mirror had shown him the subtle changes each morning, his pupils elongating slightly, tiny scales appearing at his temples, his teeth developing barely perceptible points. "My bonding is stabilizing," he said firmly. "The Shield physicians confirmed it." "They confirmed your bonds have strengthened," Brenner corrected. "But they're concerned about other changes." She hesitated. "Asher, your blood tests showed trace elements of Luminaran energy." His carefully constructed calm nearly shattered. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Brenner leaned closer. "Where do you go every third night? What's in the vials you keep in your quarters? Why do you no longer join us for meals?" The last question caught him off guard. What do meals have to do with anything? You used to enjoy rare meat. Now you avoid it entirely. Instead, you consume twice the normal amount of vegetation. Brenner's expression softened with genuine concern. "These are changes in your fundamental nature, Asher." He hadn't even noticed the shift in his diet. But she was right. Meat had begun to taste wrong, almost offensive, while plants, especially those from Letheria's garden, satisfied a new hunger. "People change," he deflected. "My recovery process altered some preferences." Brenner didn't look convinced. "The High Commander is taking an interest in your case. He's ordered a full examination by the Shield's senior healers." Panic flared within Asher, A thorough examination would reveal Litheria's potions in his system, the blending of energies, the alterations to his bonding that went far beyond recovery. "When?" he asked, struggling to keep his voice steady. "Tomorrow at dawn." Brenna placed a hand on his arm. "Asher, if there's something you need to tell me, anything, now is the time. I can help you if you're in trouble." For a moment, he considered confessing everything: the bargain, the potions, the growing intimacy with Litheria, the exhilarating changes to his body and abilities. Brenna had been his friend long before she was his fellow officer. She might understand. But behind her concern, he saw something else. Fear. Fear of what he was becoming. "There's nothing to tell," he said finally. "I'll report for examination as ordered." Brenna's disappointment was palpable. "Then, as your friend, I hope they find nothing concerning." She gathered the reports. "And as your captain, I remind you that consorting with lunagists is treason against the shield." The accusation hung in the air between them. Asher bowed stiffly and left without another word. Outside headquarters, the sapphire light of Solara beat down with midday intensity, yet Asher felt none of the usual invigoration. Instead, he found himself longing for the gentle emerald glow of Luminara, for the peaceful garden behind Litheria's cottage, for her cool touch against his increasingly warm skin. He needed to see her immediately. The examination would expose everything, unless he took drastic action. The journey to her cottage seemed longer than usual, each step taking him further from his old life. When he finally arrived, Litheria was already waiting in the garden, as if she had anticipated his unscheduled visit. "They know," he said without greeting, his voice rougher than intended. Litheria continued gathering herbs, unperturbed. "Not everything. Not yet," she assured him. "A full examination, Litheria. At dawn." Asher paced the garden path, agitated. "They'll detect the potions, the energy mixing. They'll know what we've done." "What I've done," she corrected, finally looking up. Her youthful face, no longer hidden behind the aging glamour when they were alone, showed no fear. "You came seeking help for a condition they couldn't treat. Your only crime is desperation. And treason," he added bitterly. "Consorting with a lunagist is explicitly forbidden for SHIELD members." Litheria approached him, taking his hands in hers. "Then don't go. Stay here tonight." The suggestion shocked him. Desert my post? That would confirm their suspicions. Would it matter? Her emerald eyes searched his. "What awaits you there, Asher? Judgment? Punishment? The loss of everything you've gained these past months?" Her fingers traced the new scales at his temples. "The loss of what you're becoming." Asher pulled away, conflicted. "And what exactly am I becoming, Litheria? These changes go beyond recovery. My diet, my appearance, my senses." He gestured to a reflective pool in the garden, where his altered features were visible. "What's happening to me?" Litheria's expression softened. "You're evolving, as I told you before. Your body is finally expressing its true nature, one that resonates with both celestial energies." "That's not possible," he insisted, though with less conviction than before. People are born aligned to either Solara or Luminara. That's the natural order. Is it? She laughed softly. Or is that what we've been taught to believe? She gestured around her garden. Nature seeks balance, Asher. The division between Solaran and Luminaran is artificial, a construct maintained by those who benefit from keeping people separated, limited, controlled. She led him to a small structure at the far end of the garden he had never entered before, a stone chamber built into the hillside. Inside, illuminated by bioluminescent fungi, stood a laboratory far more extensive than her cottage workbench. Glass containers lined the walls, filled with specimens and experiments in various stages. At the center stood a large crystalline apparatus that pulsed with dual energies, sapphire and emerald swirling together. "This is my true work," Lytheria explained, her voice taking on a reverent quality, restoring what was lost during the Great Division 3 centuries ago, humanity's natural ability to channel both celestial powers. Asher stared at the apparatus, mesmerized by the swirling energies. The shield teaches that such blending leads to corruption, to the Vileborn. Another lie, she spat. The Vileborn emerged not from balanced energy use, but from desperate, unguided attempts to reclaim what was forcibly taken. They are the result of suppression, not aggression. She approached a cabinet and withdrew a crystal vial containing what appeared to be liquid light. "This is the culmination of my research, a permanent solution to your condition, a final transformation that would complete what your body has already begun." Asher eyed the vial with equal parts desire and fear. "What would it do to me?" "It would break the artificial limitations placed on your bonding," Lytheria explained. "Allow you to harness both Solaran and Luminaran energy as our ancestors once did. Your Cindermander and Ember Orchid bonds would evolve, integrate fully with your changing nature. And my appearance, these changes would continue." Lytheria nodded. "Your outer form would reflect your inner harmony. Different, yes, but beautiful, powerful, free." Asher thought of the shield examination awaiting him at dawn, of Brenner's fearful eyes, of a lifetime serving an organization that had lied to him. Then he thought of the exhilaration he felt with each dose of Lytheria's potion, the expanding awareness, the growing connection to energies he had been taught to reject. "If I refuse the examination and stay here," he said slowly, "I become a deserter, a traitor to the shield." "Or a pioneer," she countered, "the first of a new generation to reclaim our true heritage." Lytheria held out the crystal vial. "The choice is yours, Asher. Return to limitation and judgment, or embrace transformation and freedom." The vial gleamed in the mixed light, calling to something deep within him that had awakened during these months of treatment. Part of him knew he should refuse, should return to headquarters and face whatever consequences came. The loyal shield commander would do his duty. But that man was fading, eclipsed by the emergence of someone, or something, profoundly different. The Solaran shield headquarters gleamed as the sapphire sun crested the mountains, casting the compound in deep blue light. The examination chamber was ready, diagnostic crystals arranged, test vials waiting, everything precise and purposeful. Captain Brenner stood at the window, watching the courtyard below. She'd arrived early. An hour later, she shifted her weight, fingers tapping once against her thigh. Asher was never late. 2 hours later, even the technician was showing concern. Perhaps he's detained elsewhere, Healer Morin suggested, his tone doubtful. Brenner's yellow falcon-bonded eyes remained fixed on the corridor. Nothing. Her stomach tightened as she recalled yesterday's conversation, Asher's careful composure cracking slightly when she mentioned the Luminaran traces in his blood, the way his hand had trembled. And now, he was 3 hours late for his examination. "I'll go to his quarters," she said quietly. Moments later, Brenner stood in the empty room. His uniform hung unused. A satchel of empty vials rested near his knapsack, and on his desk, an unsealed letter addressed to the High Commander, confessing nothing but implying everything. Captain Brenner sank onto the edge of his bunk, her worst fears converging into a single, terrible certainty. Asher hadn't just abandoned the shield. He'd made his choice, and soon, very soon, she would have to make hers, report her oldest friend as a traitor or MIA. Either way, his position was compromised. Asher's head throbbed with pulsing pain as consciousness slowly returned. He tried to open his eyes, but they felt sealed shut, crusted with something thick and viscous. His body was wrong, heavy in some places, weightless in others, burning and freezing simultaneously. Where was he? The last clear memory was taking the crystal vial from Litheria, drinking its jewel-colored contents as she watched with those intense emerald eyes. Then, chaos. His body revolting against itself, scales erupting across his skin, bones shifting, a scream that couldn't possibly have come from his human throat. With enormous effort, he forced his eyes open. The world appeared fractured, colors separated into their component parts. He was lying on a stone floor, Litheria's underground laboratory, he realized gradually. But it looked different now. The proportions wrong, details too sharp in some areas and blurred in others. "You're awake." Litheria's voice came from somewhere to his left. The transition was more dramatic than anticipated. Asher tried to respond, but his mouth formed words incorrectly, his tongue feeling too long, too flexible. "What happened?" he managed, the sound distorted and sibilant. Litheria moved into his fragmented field of vision. She looked different too, her aura visible now, a swirling pattern of energies that shifted between emerald and sapphire. Behind her, mounted on the wall where no mirror had been before, hung a reflective surface. "Can you stand?" she asked, offering her hand. Asher tried to reach for her, but his arm moved incorrectly, joints bending in unfamiliar ways. Looking down, he saw why. His arm was no longer fully human. Elongated, covered in a pattern of overlapping scales that merged with what appeared to be bark-like protrusions, fingers extended into clawed appendages. Horror flooded through him. "What did you do?" Each word was a struggle, passing through a mouth that now contained too many teeth, all sharp. "I freed you," Litheria said simply. "Help him up," she commanded, and two figures emerged from the shadows, beings Asher had never seen before. They resembled humans only in their basic structure, their bodies transformed like his own, though in different ways. One had skin that looked like polished stone veined with luminescent blue lines. The other was partially translucent, internal organs visible through a membrane that resembled flowing water. They lifted Asher with surprising gentleness, supporting him as he found his footing on legs that bent at odd angles, ending in feet that had elongated and sprouted claws. The stone creatures guided him to the mirror. The reflection that stared back was unrecognizable as Commander Asher of the Solara Shield. His face had elongated into something reptilian, scales covering most of the surface, except where plant-like structures erupted through the skin. His eyes were obsidian orbs, drained of all color. From his back sprouted what appeared to be rudimentary wings, not feathered, but a hybrid of scaled membrane and leaf-like structures. "This isn't evolution," he rasped, the words clearer now as he adapted to his new form. "This is corruption. You've turned me into a vileborn." Litheria's expression hardened. "I've made you perfect, the culmination of my work." She approached, fearlessly placing her hand against his transformed face. "The vileborn are merely failed attempts at what you have become, a being who can harness both celestial energies simultaneously." The other transformed beings moved around the laboratory with purpose, tending to equipment and specimens. Asher realized with growing horror that they were not the first. How many others had Litheria perfected before him? "How long?" he demanded, his voice stronger now. "How long have you been creating these abominations?" "Decades," Litheria admitted without shame, "though none as successful as you. Your Solara Shield training, your disciplined mind, your complementary bonds, all made you the ideal candidate." She stroked his scaled cheek almost lovingly. "My masterpiece." Rage built within Asher, a fury beyond anything his human form had ever experienced. Heat coursed through him, not just the familiar fire of his cinder-mander bonding, but something new, a cold burning that crackled with both energies. "You used me," he snarled, pulling away from her touch. "Everything. The stolen herbs, the potions, the intimacy. It was all to create this." He gestured at his transformed body. "Not just this," Litheria corrected. "For what comes next?" She moved to the central apparatus, where the dual energies swirled more violently now. For centuries, the powers that control Eden have maintained the artificial division between Solara and Luminara. They've suppressed our true potential, forced us to choose sides, limiting what we could become. She adjusted controls on the apparatus, causing the energies to pulse brighter. "With beings like you, perfect hybrids capable of channeling both energies, we can finally break their control, return to the true path of evolution." "By creating monsters?" Asher looked at the other transformed beings, who watched him with expressions of pity and recognition. They had all been in his position once, deceived, transformed, awakening to horror. "By creating gods," Litheria countered. "Look at yourself, Asher. Feel the power flowing through you. This is what humanity was meant to be before the Great Division. This is our birthright. Asher flexed his transformed hands, feeling the dual energies coursing through him. She wasn't entirely wrong. The power was intoxicating, beyond anything he had experienced even at the height of his shield training. He could sense both Solara and Luminara simultaneously, could draw from both without effort. But the cost. My humanity, he said quietly. You stole it. Lytheria laughed, the sound echoing strangely in the chamber. Humanity is just another cage, a limited form for limited beings. She gestured to the apparatus. With your help, with your power, we can finally complete the great work. We can force the reunification of the energies across all of Eden. Forced evolution. Asher began to understand the scale of her ambition. You intend to transform everyone. Only those worthy, Lytheria clarified. The rest will serve, as they always have. She approached him again, fearless despite his monstrous form. Join me willingly, Asher. Be my consort in the new world we'll create. The invitation was accompanied by a surge of energy. He could sense it now with his enhanced perception, could feel her attempting to influence his transformed mind. The realization crystallized everything. How many? He demanded, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. How many others have you lured here? How many failed before me? Lytheria's expression cooled. Does it matter? They all serve a greater purpose now. Asher looked around the laboratory with new understanding. The specimens in tanks, the detailed drawings on the walls, the extensive notes, all documented her methodical experimentation on people like him. People who had trusted her, who had come seeking help, only to become subjects in her grand design. You're creating an army, he realized aloud. The botanical thefts, the secrecy, it was all preparation for something larger. Revolution, Lytheria confirmed. The end of artificial division, the beginning of true power. She turned to the apparatus. And you, my perfect creation, will lead the vanguard. Asher felt something snap within him. Not his mind breaking, but clarity returning with stunning force. The haze of transformation, the confusion of his altered senses, cleared in an instant of pure rage. No, he said simply, his voice carrying new authority. This ends now. He summoned his power, not just the familiar Solaran fire, but the new Luminaran energy that flowed alongside it. The combination surged through his transformed body, scales glowing with dual light. The other transformed beings backed away, sensing the build-up of power. Lytheria's confidence wavered for the first time. Be reasonable, Asher. You can't return to your old life. The shield would destroy you on sight. You need me now. I need justice, he corrected, advancing toward her. For myself and all the others you've twisted into servants for your revolution. The dual energies manifested visibly now, wreathing his transformed body in blue and green flame. The apparatus began to react to the proximity of such power, its containment systems whining in protest. Lytheria's eyes widened with genuine fear. Stop! You'll destabilize the entire system! But Asher had seen enough, understood enough. This laboratory, this great work, it had to end. He unleashed his power. The explosion of dual energies tore through the laboratory like a storm. shattering equipment and sending specimens crashing to the floor. The central apparatus, designed to contain and manipulate the celestial powers, couldn't withstand the raw force Asher now commanded. It imploded with a sound like 1,000 screams, releasing a wave of chaotic energy that rippled outward. Lytheria raised her hands in a desperate attempt to shield herself. "You fool!" she hissed over the din of destruction. "Years of work, destroyed in a tantrum." Asher advanced through the storm of his own making, each step more confident as he adapted to his new form. "Not a tantrum," he growled. "Justice." The other transformed beings had fled, seeking safety in adjacent chambers. Only Lytheria remained. "You can't undo what's been done," she warned, backing toward a concealed exit. "You're mine now, my creation, my perfect specimen." "I am no one's specimen," he declared, the dual flames intensifying around him. His transformed body responded to his will with increasing precision, the initial clumsiness fading as he embraced its capabilities. Lytheria changed tactics, her voice softening. "Asher, please, think of what we could accomplish together. The shield has lied to you your entire life. They've suppressed the truth about our potential." She lowered her defensive posture. "We could free everyone from artificial limitations. We could restore balance to Eden." For a moment, doubt crept into his resolve. What if she were right about the larger deception? What if the strict separation of energies was indeed an artificial construct designed to control? The power flowing through him now, the simultaneous connection to both celestial bodies, felt natural despite his monstrous form. Lytheria sensed his hesitation. "Your transformation is just the beginning. With refinement, with guidance, your form would stabilize, become beautiful. The first stages are always difficult, but—" "How many?" Asher interrupted, his voice rumbling through the chamber. "How many others did you promise the same? How many believed you, trusted you, only to become experiments?" Her expression hardened. Sacrifices were necessary. Progress demands a price. And who decided they should pay it? Asher advanced again, the laboratory continuing to crumble around them. "Did they volunteer? Or did you manipulate them as you did me?" "They were weak," she spat, abandoning pretense. "Their transformations failed because their minds couldn't expand beyond the artificial constraints society placed on them. But you're different. Your mind is adapting, embracing the change. Don't throw away your potential out of misguided morality." Asher saw the truth now. Lytheria didn't care about balance or freedom. She sought power, the power to reshape others according to her vision, regardless of the cost. Her revolution would replace one form of control with another, more terrible version. "I've heard enough," he decided, gathering his strength for a final confrontation. Lytheria's expression twisted with rage. "Then you'll join my failed experiments." She extended a hand toward him with malicious intent. "If you won't serve willingly, you'll serve mindlessly." Before Asher could react, black mist shot from her hand, enveloping him in suffocating darkness. The effect was immediate, his mind clouded, his will weakening. his control over his transformed body faltering. "A special ability," Lytheria explained, her voice seeming to come from everywhere at once. "Designed to subdue rebellious specimens. Your body remains powerful, but your mind..." She laughed coldly. "Your mind belongs to me now." He struggled against the encroaching darkness, his thoughts becoming sluggish. The laboratory, Lytheria, his own body, all seemed increasingly distant, viewed through a narrowing tunnel of consciousness. "Fight it," he gasped, more to himself than to her. He summoned his training, years of shield discipline, focusing his will against external influence. The dual energies within him responded sluggishly, but they responded. Lytheria circled him, watching his struggle with clinical interest. Impressive resistance. Most succumb within seconds. She made notes in a small journal she had retrieved from among the wreckage. Even in rebellion, you prove your superior quality. The blackness constricted further, tendrils of it seeming to wrap around Asher's mind, seeking entry into his deepest thoughts. Images flashed before him, his life in the shield, his early suspicions of Lytheria, their growing intimacy, the horror of his transformation. Each memory the darkness touched became distorted, rewritten. "Stop fighting," she urged, her voice honeyed with false concern. "Surrender to the change. Let me guide you to your true potential." Something in her tone, in the calculated manipulation behind it, sparked his defiance. This was the voice that had lured countless others to their doom, that had convinced him to betray his oaths, that now sought to erase his very self. With a bestial roar, Asher channeled both celestial energies simultaneously, not outward as before, but inward, creating a surge of purifying power that coursed through him. The black mist recoiled, hissing like a living thing as it retreated from the jewel light emanating from within him. "Impossible," she whispered, genuine fear marring her voice. "The compound is infallible." "Not against true balance," Asher realized, the words coming with perfect clarity as the darkness continued to recede. "Not against energies working in harmony, instead of opposition." He straightened to his full height, considerably taller than his human form had been, and advanced on Lytheria. The laboratory was in ruins around them, equipment shattered, specimens released or destroyed, years of meticulous research reduced to rubble. Lytheria backed toward the exit, her composure crumbling. "You need me, Asher. Without my guidance, your transformation will destabilize. You'll degenerate into a mindless vileborn within days." "Perhaps," he acknowledged, continuing his inexorable approach. "But I'll face that fate as myself, not as your puppet." She turned to flee, but Asher moved with unexpected speed, his transformed body capable of bursts of movement his prior form could never have achieved. He caught her arm, careful not to injure her with his clawed hand. "You will answer for your crimes," he declared. "To the shield, to the watch, to all those you've harmed." Lytheria laughed bitterly. "And who would judge me?" The same authorities who maintain the artificial division, who suppresses our true potential. They would execute me and dissect you without a second thought. A tremor shook the chamber, more violent than before. The ceiling began to crack, dust and stone raining down around them. The energy build-up, she gasped, looking upward with genuine alarm. The apparatus was containing it, without the stabilization fields. She met Asher's eyes with unexpected sincerity. This entire hillside is going to collapse. Asher glanced around, realizing she was right. The chaotic energies released from the destroyed apparatus were interacting with the natural ley lines beneath the hillside, creating increasing instability. We need to evacuate, he decided, releasing her arm. Get your other experiments out. Lytheria stared at him in disbelief. You still care about saving lives, even after what I've done to you? Because you're the only one who can undo it, he replied, already moving toward the chambers where the other transformed beings had fled. I won't let your victims suffer further. Lytheria hesitated, then nodded, following him toward the inner chambers. The northern tunnel leads to the surface, she directed. It's reinforced against collapse. Together, they guided the other transformed beings, 12 in total, each unique in their corruption, toward the escape route. Asher was shocked by their condition. Unlike him, many seemed to have lost significant cognitive function, responding to simple commands, but showing little individual will. What did you do to them? He demanded as they hurried through the increasingly unstable passages. Early experiments, Lytheria explained without remorse. Their minds couldn't integrate the dual energies properly. Yours is the first truly successful transformation. Asher felt sick at her casual dismissal of the suffering she had caused. These had been people once, SHIELD members, villagers, travelers, all reduced to shambling experiments in her quest for power. They reached a heavy stone door that marked the northern exit. Asher braced himself against it, his transformed strength easily moving what would have required machinery in his human form. Fresh air rushed in, carrying the scent of the forest above. Get them to safety, he ordered, helping the confused beings through the opening. They moved slowly, uncomprehending of the danger, requiring guidance for each step. As the last of them emerged into the night air, Asher turned to Lytheria. Your turn. She stepped toward the exit, then paused, looking back at the laboratory complex. My research, she murmured. Decades of work. Ends tonight, he finished firmly. There's no going back for either of us. Another violent tremor shook the tunnel, sending cracks racing along the walls. The hillside was becoming increasingly unstable as the released energies continued to interact chaotically. Lytheria met his gaze, calculation replacing regret. You're right, Commander. There is no going back. She calmly reached into her robe and withdrew another vial, this one filled with liquid that shimmered with malevolent purpose. I had hoped to perfect the process with you, she said with genuine sadness, to create a willing partner in the great work. But if I cannot have that, she raised the vial, then I will have a servant. Before Asher could react, she smashed the vial at his feet. This compound was different from the mind-clouding mist. It erupted in tendrils of living darkness that wrapped around his limbs with physical force, binding him in place. A more direct approach, Lytheria explained, backing toward the exit. This compound doesn't cloud the mind. It reshapes it. Her expression hardened. Goodbye, Commander Asher. When next we meet, you will serve me without question. The binding darkness tightened, seeping into his transformed skin wherever it touched. Asher roared in pain and fury, struggling against the tendrils even as they began to burn into his flesh. Lytheria stepped through the exit, pausing for one final look at her perfect specimen. For a moment, something like regret crossed her features. Then she closed the heavy door, sealing Asher inside the collapsing complex. Alone in the failing structure, bound by living darkness that seeped deeper into his being with each passing second, Asher faced the full horror of his situation. The physical restraints he might overcome with his newly enhanced strength, but the compound was already working its way through his system, altering his thoughts, reshaping his will. With desperation born of imminent loss, he summoned the dual energies once more, focusing them against the invading compound. Blue and green light emanated from within, battling the darkness that sought to claim him. The hillside shuddered again, more violently than before. The ceiling began to give way in sections, large stones crashing down around him. Time was running out. In what might be his final act of free will, Asher made a decision. He would not become Lytheria's slave. He would not be used as a weapon against the people he had sworn to protect. If the only way to prevent that fate was to end here, buried beneath tons of rock and soil, then so be it. He closed his eyes, accepting his fate as the darkness pressed deeper and the world began to fall around him. Consciousness returned in fragments, disjointed sensations filtering through layers of confusion, pressure, darkness, the taste of dirt and stone, pain throughout a body that no longer felt familiar. Asher couldn't determine how long he had been unconscious. Hours, days, perhaps longer. He was buried, entombed beneath the collapsed laboratory complex. Yet he lived. His transformed body, stronger than human flesh could ever be, had withstood what should have been a fatal collapse. But at what cost? Memories surfaced slowly. Lytheria's betrayal, the mysterious alchemy she had used against him. The compound. Had it worked? Was his mind still his own? Asher tried to sort through his thoughts, searching for evidence of tampering, of foreign control. His hatred for Lytheria remained sharp and clear. His horror at what she had done to him and others was unchanged. His commitment to stopping her still burned bright. Yet something was different. The dual energies within him had shifted, integrated more fully during his unconsciousness. Where before they had existed in uneasy parallel, now they flowed together, intertwined in patterns he could sense but not fully comprehend. With careful focus, he directed this combined power outward, illuminating his immediate surroundings. He was in a pocket created by fallen beams and machinery, protected from being completely crushed, but thoroughly trapped. The air was stale, but breathable, suggesting some connection to the surface, however tenuous. Asher examined what he could see of his transformed body in the dim glow he generated. The changes had progressed during his unconsciousness. His skin was now almost entirely covered in scales that shifted between reptilian texture and plant-like patterns. The rudimentary wings had developed further, membranes thickening between extended bone structures. His hands and feet had become more articulated, claws more pronounced. But most disturbing was the dark veining that spread across his scales, evidence of Litheria's alchemical compound, partially integrated into his system. He had fought it off enough to maintain his consciousness, his self, but not enough to prevent it from altering him further. He was becoming what he had feared, a true Vileborn, a hybrid creature whose form reflected the unnatural blending of energies and substances never meant to combine. Yet his mind remained his own, clearer, in fact, than it had been since the transformation began. The confusion and horror had given way to cold clarity. He understood now what Litheria had done, what she planned, and what he must do in response. With newfound determination, Asher began to dig. His hybrid body, despite its monstrous appearance, worked with precise coordination now. Claws that had seemed unwieldy before became perfect tools for shifting debris. Strength that had felt chaotic was now controlled, directed. Hour after hour, he tunneled upward through the collapsed hillside. Sometimes he encountered pockets of freed energy from the destroyed apparatus, swirling eddies of sapphire and emerald power that he absorbed into himself, partially replenishing his strength. When he finally broke through to the surface, Luminara hung low in the pre-dawn sky, her emerald light casting long shadows across the devastated landscape. The hillside had partially collapsed, creating a depression where Litheria's cottage and garden had once stood. No trace remained of the other transformed beings he had helped evacuate. Asher emerged fully, stretching his altered form under the open sky. His senses, enhanced beyond human capacity, detected no immediate threats. No shield patrols, no Luminaran watch, no observers of any kind. The remote location had kept the catastrophe hidden, at least for now. He turned toward Marashar, barely visible in the distance. His first instinct was to return, to warn the shield about Litheria, to explain what had happened. But one look at his reflection in a nearby pond dispelled that notion. The creature that stared back at him would never be welcomed by his former comrades. They would attack on sight, seeing only a monster, not the man who still lived within. As he contemplated his next move, a new sensation intruded, a pulling awareness, a connection he had not felt before. Focusing on it, Asher realized he could sense other transformed beings at a distance. Litheria's failed experiments, the ones he had helped evacuate, called to him through some resonance of their shared condition. Following this connection, he moved through the forest with surprising speed and grace, his four-legged gait swiftly moving him through the terrain. Dawn approached, Solara's sapphire light beginning to push back Luminara's emerald glow, yet neither weakened him now. Both celestial bodies fed his dual nature, keeping him at full strength regardless of the hour. He found the first of the transformed beings huddled in a cave 2 miles from the collapsed laboratory. The creature, once human, now a twisted amalgamation of animal and plant aspects, cowered at his approach, recognizing his greater power. Asher reached out, not with his clawed hand, but with his mind, connecting through the resonance they shared. Images formed in the mental link, memories of a shield patrol, an injury, seeking help from a healer, Litheria's cottage, promises of recovery, betrayal, pain, transformation, and finally, enslavement. This had been Taran, a shield scout who had disappeared 3 seasons ago during a routine patrol. The shield had assumed death by predator or accident. Instead, he had become one of Litheria's first successful transformations. Successful in form, if not in mind. Anger renewed itself in Asher's heart. He reached deeper into the connection, past the chaotic surface thoughts, seeking what remained of the man beneath. There, buried under layers of fear and confusion, the core of Taran still existed, preserved but inaccessible. Asher did what instinct told him was possible. He channeled the dual energies through their connection, using his more successfully integrated transformation to help stabilize Taran's fragmented mind. The effect was immediate. The creature's eyes cleared, focused, recognition dawning where only animal awareness had existed before. "Commander?" The word emerged, distorted through a mouth not designed for human speech, but the intent was clear. "Rest easy, Scout Taran," Asher replied, his own transformed voice, rumbling but articulate. "You're not alone anymore." Over the next day, Asher tracked down and connected with all 11 of Litheria's other experiments. Each connection strengthened both him and them, creating a network of shared awareness. None could be restored to human form. Their transformations were too complete, too deeply integrated into their beings. But their minds could be partially recovered, their suffering eased. As the group gathered in the forest clearing that became their temporary haven, Asher considered their future. They could not return to human society, not as they were, but neither could they abandon it to Litheria's schemes. The others looked to him now, recognizing in him a leader who shared their condition, but retained his purpose. Through their mental connection, Asher sensed Litheria's location. She had fled northward, toward the remote mountains, where ancient ruins provided hiding places unknown to either the Solaran Shield or the Luminaran Watch. "She will try again," he told his gathered companions, their misshapen forms illuminated by the dual light of dusk, when both celestial bodies shared the sky. "She believes her work is necessary, that the forced blending of energies will create a superior race under her control." The others growled their understanding, memories of captivity and experimentation fresh in their partially restored minds. "We cannot allow that," Asher continued. "We may be changed, we may be exiles, But we still have a duty to protect Eden from her version of progress. He looked at each of them in turn. Will you join me? The response came not in words, but in a surge of shared purpose through their mental connection. These broken beings, victims of Litheria's ambition, united in their determination to prevent others from suffering their fate. Asher raised his transformed hand toward the jewel lights in the sky. Then we hunt. As they prepared to depart, following the mental trail that would lead them to Litheria, Asher felt a strange acceptance settling within him. He would never again be the shield commander he once was. His regular life had ended in that underground laboratory. But perhaps this new existence had purpose, to use what had been done to him to protect others, to turn Litheria's weapon against her. The group moved through the forest as darkness fell completely, their altered forms allowing them to travel swiftly and silently. Asher led them northward, toward the mountains where their creator awaited, unaware that her greatest success had become her greatest threat. In the shadows between human and monster, between Solaran and Luminaran, a new force had awakened in Eden. Not quite vile-born, though they might appear so to untrained eyes, but something with purpose, with clarity and determination. Litheria had sought to create the perfect servant. Instead, she had created her perfect nemesis. But alas, that is all the time we have for tonight. Please let me know if you would like to hear more of Asher's journey. Will he return to the Solaran shield, or be hunted by them? Will Asher get revenge for Litheria's manipulation, or will she continue to maneuver his actions? But until then, I bid you farewell, and good night.